Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on Internet information separating fact from fiction. I'm Tim Ryan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host today, and our presenter is Bud Freund. More on Bud in just a minute. Some brief info on SCORE. We are the nonprofit national partner of the Small Business Administration and over 10,000 volunteers nationally. SCORE Fairfield County has about 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. First, free one-on-one counseling. Second, educational workshop and webinars like this one. And third, we have extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts and templates to help you build your business plan. Our next live webinar is Tuesday, November 5th at noon, and the topic is LinkedIn with Lorraine Duncan. Look at this for the specifics on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a large number of recorded webinars on our website that cover a wide range of business topics. These can be viewed at any time by clicking on the on-demand webinars. Some useful info about today's event. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button at any time during the presentation. It's located in the lower part of your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available on our website within the next few days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Bud Freund. Bud makes computers do what they're supposed to do and stop doing what they shouldn't. He has been teaching technology to users of all ages and providing tech support to small businesses looking for reasonable, cost-effective hardware and software solutions for over 20 years. He is a frequent SCORE workshop presenter, as well as a certified SCORE mentor focusing on technology tips, tricks, topics, and trends. I'll now turn it over to Bud. Bud?
Thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone. We have a lot of stuff to cover today, so I just wanted to show you what we're going to be talking about. And one other item before we dive in too deeply, since some of you may consider some of this to be slightly controversial, a quick disclaimer that this is my stuff and not SCORE's or the SBA's. So the first area I want to talk about is e-commerce because there's a lot of us who do that. So I like to think of these devices we've got as the everything thing, and they really are. They're billing, banking, investing, research, recreation, education, information, misinformation, disinformation, shopping, and of course, inexplicably, binge-watching cats on YouTube. So the proper care and feeding of these devices is going to be very important for keeping them alive. So two thoughts on that. At the top on the right side, you'll see something called a bit.ly. A bit.ly is a neat little way of taking a really long URL and crushing it down into something that is absolutely unintelligible. Nobody has any idea of where 2xUIMI4 is going to take you. However, if you add a plus sign to the end of any bit.ly, it is like a stopgap that will tell you where that link is going to go before you actually go there. You can also find that out from this checkshorturl.com if you cut and paste the bit.ly into there. And the other thing, of course, are QR codes. I don't know any human being who can read a QR code. So again, where you get them from is an exercise in caution, let's say. I'm not sure you want a QR code off a billboard wall on a street. If you're in Home Depot or at a store or in a publication that's got a listed, respected name on it, it's a pretty safe bet that that will be a safe a QR code to use. Few items to also keep in mind for keeping your technology safe is ongoing education, things like this, where you'll get more information and warnings, cautionary notes and suggestions and tips. Where you get your information and how you disseminate that information is another place to be somewhat cautious, particularly in a volatile environment like this, where an opinion could reflect on your bottom line. I'm a big believer in antivirus on softwares. I'm a big believer in doing backups. Also, check your emails by hovering over them before you click on links that will take you to some place you may not want to go. Obviously, passwords and two-factor, two-step, multi-factor authentication, whatever you'd like to call it, very important for keeping your stuff safe. And most importantly, update your hardware often, please. There's 80,000 doors into and out of a computer, and if they plugged all the holes up, you wouldn't get any work done. So I strongly urge you to do updates on your mobile devices as well as your computers. Couple of guidelines for passwords. And as you're looking through this screen, just want to remind you that, as Tim said, this will be posted online. So if this moves a little too fast for you on the first prezo, understand that it's going to be available to review. Hit the pause button, study it as long as you want. Few other thoughts I've been sharing in a number of places. First off, have two credit cards, one in your wallet for what you do around the world in stores and in our physical world, and the other for online. Because if there's a problem with one, you'll have a fallback with the other. Also, if you have a problem, be sure to ask your credit card provider to expedite the delivery of your new card so you're not waiting for days and days, and rather hopefully getting something overnight. I've also become a very big proponent of using PayPal with two-step authentication, and here's the process. If you go to a website, whether it's a store or it's a pharmacy or it's an online shop, wherever you're going, if they offer you the option to use PayPal to pay, you can click the PayPal link. You will be pushed over to PayPal. It will ask you for your username and password, your two-step authentication, approve the purchase, and then push you back to wherever you were. By doing that process, it may take you a little longer to make your purchase. However, it will be one less place that you have given your credit card information to online. Also, if you are using Venmo and you go into settings, you can set a password on your Venmo app. By default, Venmo does not have a password. So if somebody gets into your Venmo account, they would be able to use it. Also, I'd keep people off your computer if you don't know who they are. Satya Nadella and Tim Cook are not going to call you to tell you that there's a problem with your computer. There are millions, if not billions, of people using computers. Don't let people on your machine remotely unless you know who they are and where they're from. Finally, if you have a bank vault and you've got highly sensitive information that you taking it out of your house and putting it somewhere else safely is a consideration. Although I heard commentary about the fact that because these rooms are sealed and without oxygen, there could be a risk to the actual data surfaces that you're putting in there. But I haven't seen much in the way of confirmation, and that was only one article. Another item, make all of your usernames and passwords unique? Well, users, if they ask for your email, I wouldn't have multiple emails, but passwords, please, please, please. Unique passwords everywhere you go, because if somebody uses the same password over and over and they have a problem, guess what? It's accessible everywhere you've used it. And the other place that we may be forgetting to make a change is on the router that controls the stuff inside of your house getting out to the internet. That password is usually something like administrator or password, or it could be Netgear. A very important place to change your password, because those people who you don't want onto your stuff know what these passwords are. So watch those attachments that are in your emails, and in the words of Sergeant Phil Esterhaus from Hill Street Blues, be careful, please. And I think I've mentioned this many, many times. Hover over the links. Look at where they're going to take you before you click on them, and you're sorry for moving too quickly. That's also not the place where you want to put your password. Put it into, if you're going to put it into a file, name the file something like birthdays or shopping list or wedding guests or anything but this is the file where I put all of my passwords. It's a really bad name for a password file. Many of you have probably seen the shortened version of Sun Tzu's comment from, oh my, on the name of the book, Art of War. That's from the Art of War, and they don't always do the full translation, but you get the general idea, I'm sure. And Alexa, another place where things are constantly being recorded or showing up or being tracked. And again, you can delete that information as well. If you have a website for your business, look over it regularly. This homeopathic doctor, who's now retired, didn't realize that somebody had broken in and was using his website to promote other businesses that are probably not the businesses that he would want to be associated with. So, the Fairness Doctrine. And I put my hand over my heart when I say the name Walter Cronkite. I don't know if any of you got the opportunity to watch him be a newscaster on CBS, but very definitive statement about what journalism is about. Seeking truth. You have to get sides of a story. Here's what comes interesting from that. Definition at dictionary.com. Definition at Merriam-Webster. Don't say anything about seeking truth. What do I know? So, what was the Fairness Doctrine? Well, it was in effect from 1949 until it was repealed by Ronald Reagan in 1987, which was about the time of when television started and started to grow into its enormous informational growth. And it required these news organizations to present both sides of an argument, because of the belief that so many people would be watching. To skew information did not do any good to the public. And by the way, just a quick note, on Ronald Reagan's staff at the White House was a fellow named Roger Ailes, who went on to be the head of Fox News. Now, the Fairness Doctrine was repealed because it was believed that the First Amendment right to freedom of speech was being impinged upon in this requirement to present both sides of an argument and provide information. However, as you'll see in just a little bit, this informational requirement maybe something that could be a saving grace for news organizations as they moved into our current electronic era. News organizations do retractions and clarifications because their abilities in their presenting inaccurate information. News organizations can be sued. In fact, not only have they been sued, but they have lost their arguments. And in the case of Fox News, they paid Dominion Voting Systems $787.5 million to settle a defamation lawsuit. And they have a second lawsuit pending with Smartmatic in 2025 to the tune of $2.7 billion with a countersuit to the same dollar amount. Smartmatic has also done settlements with Newsmax and One America News Network, again, over these rigged voting machines. So understand that the cost of free speech is getting pretty high these days. Now, if you're curious to find out where your information resource stands, Ad Fontes Media produces, and I don't know how they create their algorithm, but they produce this chart to provide some insight, certainly into media buyers, as to where they could be spending their media dollars. Are they leaning to the left? Are they leaning to the right? Are they accurate? Are they fabricating? And where I was previously talking about two-step authentication, here I want to talk about 2SI and recommend that you start to get two sources of information, because if you only rely on one source of information, it may not necessarily be a valid source anymore. It's really hard to tell. So let's start to look at this Section 230 of the Federal Communications Code, which stipulates that these interactive computer services, and the top 15 are over there on the right. Look at how many people are touching these websites. A massive amount of people globally. And by the way, Douyin is an equivalent to, I believe it's Instagram, but I don't, no, I'm Instagram. I don't want to be quoted on that. Baidu is also another Chinese website. More importantly, these are the top 15 interactive computer services, none of whom are liable for the information that is posted on them. And that's a really important piece of information for you as the obtainer of information from the internet. Where you're getting it from, these people aren't liable if they put up something that's fake. They're not liable. It's that you could track down the person who posted it, but they, as an entity, aren't liable. More to come on that in just a little bit. Social media started here with a guy getting up on a soapbox and saying something in public. And as you saw, the numbers for that public rant have just exploded beyond comprehension. Nobody expected this. Least of all, the news business, because at one time, they were the sole source of information, and now they're caught in this jumble of information super free-for-all, where you don't quite know where you're getting it or what you're getting it from or who said it or how valid. And just for the record, governments globally are starting to crack down on what's become an enormous informational problem. Recently, Brazil was fining $900,000 a day to X, formerly known as Twitter, until they did some modifications to the people that could post in Brazil. They were shut down in Brazil for a while also. And in France, the CEO of Telegram was jailed because the French government believed that he was aiding in criminal activity. Now, Trudy Wade, for many years, was my Section 230 poster child because Google was not liable for what they were posting. More recently, and I do check on a very regular basis, a lot of this has been cleaned up. However, if you Google Trudy Wade, comma, bigot, it's still out there. Once it's out there, it's really, really hard to make this stuff go away. And Google isn't liable. You can petition them to take things down, but there is no lawsuit that you can file against them. Now, I want to focus for a moment on Facebook and this fellow Andrew Bosworth, who back in 2016 put this post up, and it was taken down very shortly after it went up. Mr. Bosworth is still working at Facebook, now known as Meta. The posting, that went away, but just tuck that in the back of your head for a few minutes because I want to go into something where it was clearly significant. Sure, you recognize the Norman Rockwell classics. That is a Norman Rockwell knockoff by the Internet Research Agency of St. Petersburg, Russia. Here's the backstory. It starts with Facebook data and Professor Alexander Kogan, who was teaching at Cambridge University in England and Moscow College. And he went to Facebook in 2023 and said, I'd like to run an app and do some research on your data. And the app was called This Is Your Digital Life. And basically what the app did was to pull all of your contacts of your contact book became part of Professor Kogan's contact list. He would then solicit all of those people, pull their contacts, solicit those people, pull their contacts to the tune of about 87 million names that were taken from Professor Kogan over to Cambridge Analytica, a company that was backed by Robert Mercer, head of Mercer Media, and also a backer of Breitbart, where is Mr. Bannon will be getting out of jail on November 1st. But for the moment, information went from Professor Kogan to Cambridge Analytica. From Cambridge Analytica, it was pushed over to the Internet Research Agency, where they prepared these ads for the 2016 battleground states. The ads were paid for with rubles, and at the end of the investigation by Robert Mueller, 13 Russians were indicted for interfering in the election, though I'm not sure anything will ever come of those indictments. However, Facebook ended up paying a number of fines, and they did it because they didn't do anything wrong. I don't know many people that pay a $5 billion fine for not doing anything wrong, but this is what seems to happen. However, to the credit of our government, they were able to shut down the Internet Research Agency for the 2018 midterm elections, literally shut down the Internet to one thing, in St. Petersburg, Russia. Think about that for just a moment. It's like shutting off a light switch in San Francisco. Quite extraordinary, the capability that we have on the internet online. Now, I want to talk about a second item that occurred in a similar time frame, which was the Christchurch shooting in 2019. Several days afterwards, Mark Zuckerberg made this quote in his op-ed in the Washington Post. But what's important to note is that 3 weeks after this event occurred in New Zealand, Australia passed a law that basically said if you post hate speech on your social media platform, we will fine you up to 10% of your annual profit, and we will jail your employees for up to 3 years. So, important to note that there are other countries that are working differently towards regulating what is getting posted online. However, as long as Section 230 of the Federal Communications Code stays in effect, companies like Facebook and Google and Instagram are going to be liability free. Now, one other thing, just a more personal note. If you post really large images online, what happens is that people extract the photos and find out that there's tape over your camera and your microphone. And I don't recall the name of the case, but I'm sure you recall that several years ago, people were going to jail because they were faking their children's college applications. And the process was fairly simple. Download the large image of the tennis player, superimpose your child's head on the tennis player, upload that as part of your college application. So limit the size of the files that you upload. It is for your own safety. So now we've expanded into this area of artificial intelligence where you're not quite sure of what you're getting or where it's coming from or how. So, and it's good. A colleague of mine here at SCORE, Matt Krieger, did an absolutely fabulous webinar on how your business can utilize ChatGPT. And GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which in simple English translates into being what I like to call a regurgitator. If the information has been pre-trained, also known as machine learned, into a computer system, the computer can then help you to rewrite a document or figure out a process. I use an AI service called Perplexity, which will cite all of its sources and will save the information that you query. So very significant, helpful to me in a number of situations. I've used it to create this presentation, by the way. And as I'm sure you know, there's a number of copyright lawsuits that are currently pending because in the world of AI, because this information can be scraped from literally anywhere, until you have a contract with the sources that you're pulling the information from, you are doing a copyright violation. So while it's a fabulous way to gather information and to use it to your benefit, proceed with caution because you may be taking somebody else's information without permission.
What if instead of Mona Lisa talking with a man's voice, this was a government official saying something they had never actually said?
I made that on a Macintosh computer with $35 software called Crazy Talk. And while this is kind of rough, and I used it for a number of classes that I was teaching at the time, that's unsettling that software so inexpensive can be used to do something of this sort. And it's only gotten better. Sure, some of these faces are very familiar until, of course, you get to Aitana Lopez, who never comes in with a bad hair day or a hangover or an attitude problem because she's purely computer generated. This is an unsettling place that we're evolving into when something like this isn't so easy to differentiate from the real thing. So, as I said before, and I'm going to repeat it, use two sources of information. It becomes more and more critical as time goes on. I'm sure many of you are familiar with SEAL Team 6, military service people who train extensively to do all kinds of crazy operations that I would not want to be involved with myself. However, I am grateful they're around to do that. That's Meal Team 6, purely computer. And as you can see, enormous number of reasons as to why people don't believe this is the real thing. And yet, in a cursory glance, you might think this was the real thing. So, once upon a time, you could buy a musket in America and you didn't need a background check or a permit. You could get a driver's license without taking a written test or a driving test. And you could buy snake oil without clinical trials or FDA approval. In each of those cases, the rules, laws, regulations, statutes, call them whatever you want, for the safety and well-being of the public. To buy a computer today, all you need is a pre-approved credit card or cash, and there aren't too many regulations or stipulations. And while Facebook is supposed to be for those over 13, I don't know how they figure that out. If a 12-year-old is good at math, they can pick a wrong year. So I'm not sure how we prevent this safety and well-being for the general public in the world of computing. However, this is my old hit list of places that are hacked. And I would suspect, as you saw from Mark Zuckerberg earlier, that the regulating or monitoring or changing in the structure of how this information is disseminated is kind of important these days. So, any questions that I can answer for people? I wanted to save a lot of time in case there was a bunch to ask. Tim?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Bud. That was great. Yeah, well, now we'll use the remaining time for Q&A. We will take as many as we can until 1 o'clock. So please use the Q&A section or the chat section. One thing that I was thinking about is I've had mentor clients, and they always struggle with building a business plan, getting research, market research, for instance, like how many pizzas are sold in my town or in the state, and I think a lot of them are going to Google that. Is that the proper way to get information, or is there a better source you think out
Well,
there?
there are multiple places that you can go to. Obviously, Google is a well-known name. Um, ChatGPT and other AI services are a great way to formulate questions, and you may have to ask multiple questions. You may have to scratch a while to come up with something that they will answer. The other place that's really a good consideration are the business librarians at various libraries. As you know, SCORE has a very close affiliation with the Westport Library, and their business librarian has extensive resources into databases that are, from what I'm told, rather expensive to be accessed. And that's what they train to do, is to do research for just the kind of thing you're describing. Get market data, and it would be available there. The website I listed earlier, adfontesmedia.com or .org, I'm drawing a blank right now, sorry. But Adfontes Media, as a purchased service, they will tell you a media entity is getting in the way of attendance for any of their various publications or shows. So there are resources out there. Google is obviously a first place to start, but if there's a single takeaway from this, it's not the only place to start. And also consider the fact that Google can use for placement people who purchase space. In other words, if I buy that top slot in Google, I'm the first place you're looking to for information, whether my information is correct or skewed. So another consideration to bear in mind on the veracity of Google information.
Right. Okay. Christopher was asking if you could explain how the plus sign works at the
Oh,
end of a
sure.
bit.ly link.
Okay. Um, bit.ly.com is a website. You can belong to it at no cost. And over the course of a month, they will allow you to create, again, an arbitrary number, let's say 40 bit.lys, which would take these enormously long URLs that everything is becoming today. It might be IBM.com, but by the time you get to whatever information it is at IBM, that URL could be as long as your arm. So what Bitly allows you to do is to take that enormously long URL, copy it, create a new link in Bitly, paste the long URL in, and Bit will either give you that arbitrary URL link that you saw on screen earlier, or you can give it a specific name, provided it's not there already. In other words, if you wanted to bit.ly/AI info, Bitly will say somebody already took that. However, if you make a capital A, somebody may not have taken that, or a capital I. But the requirement for bit.lys is that if they're upper or lower case, you've got to be very specific or you're not going to get to where you want to go. So now you've created this bit.ly, which is a truncated URL, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to anybody, but it's so much easier to put that into an email or onto a web page or into a presentation like this. But if you don't know where that bit.ly is going to be taking you, the safety valve to avoid a problem is that when you paste the bit.ly into your browser, add a plus sign at the end of the bit.ly, and it's almost like a stopgap in between, I want to go here, and what will show up on screen once you've added the plus sign at the end of the bit.ly on screen will be, you are about to go to this website. Is this where you really want to go? And depending upon whether it's what you think it's supposed to be, you can either say yes, or if it doesn't look just right, you might not want to. In years previous, I used to talk about an add-on for Firefox, which is still available, by the way, if you use Firefox, and it's called FlagFox. And FlagFox will provide you with the country of origin for any particular website. So, for instance, if you were going to Citibank or M&T Bank, and you see the flag of Lithuania, you may not want to click on that link. And with these bit.lys, putting in that plus sign is the same preventative to keeping your life somewhat safe.
Right, great. I just want to remind everybody that you will receive a link to the recording of this. I know I'm going to go back and I like that one slide you had of the 15 most common social media sites. I couldn't come up with 5 if you asked me, but 15. Wow, that was something. Steve was just pointing out LinkedIn, and this is it hits me as well. I know I set up a LinkedIn account like 20 years ago and hadn't gone on in years, so this could have happened to me as well. But he says my LinkedIn account was hacked. The hacker changed his name, his photo, his location, and ultimately his work history. He worked with LinkedIn and they, for the most part, restored his data. They couldn't restore his photo though. And so he thinks it was a LinkedIn data breach, but he doesn't understand why someone would want to hijack a LinkedIn profile. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, well, where people are soliciting you is vast. It could be as an email, be that while uh, the LinkedIn profile wasn't the end game, the names in the profile might have been the end game. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the phrase phishing, which is when people send out the fake emails looking for you to reply. Spear phishing is when somebody is specifically targeting a specific individual. In other words, if I believe it was Steve, if Steve had been working with the chief financial officer of his particular company, the quantity of research that's done to hit on somebody or a company is extensive now. So here's a hypothetical, and I want to say the word hypothetical again. So I get to Steve, I change Steve's stuff. Steve is connected to Louise, and Louise is the chief financial officer of XYZ Co. And now, with this fake name, fake ID, and fake information, I can now start creating a conversation with Louise so that I could try to develop my business relation with somebody who's closer to the money at a company. So now, rather than Steve being the target, potentially the target was somebody that Steve knew. And now all of these connections, they could start to spearfish to this other individual. Let's do a business deal. We're going to need a $30,000 transfer. And now suddenly money is starting to move and it's not to the place where you thought. To Steve's point and yours as well, Tim, once upon a time when we all were under this delusion that we needed to gather as many names as we could in our social media without really knowing who they were, I got connected to a fellow named Orand. And Orand was recommending me for networking. Now, the networking, and I saved this in one of my presentations somewhere, Orand recommends me for networking. And I don't know if Orand is recommending me for networking because I'm a friendly guy who talks to people in business meetings, or if he's talking about networking where you take a wire, you plug it into the computer at one end, and you run the wire to the other end, and you plug it into a router or a switch. But because we were all in this rush to accumulate people, those kinds of questions kind of went to the back burner. Today, with the amount of hacking and spoofing and phishing, it's a very real question. I don't make friends on these social media platforms without really good reason or direct firsthand knowledge.
Yeah. Although social media is so important, especially to businesses just starting out, because it can be a free or very cheap way of getting your name out there. Once again, looking at the list of 15 social media sites, I was surprised Twitter was actually down so far on the list in terms of number of users.
For
Um,
numbers, real numbers, okay? Twitter was purchased by Elon Musk for $44 billion. And the last valuation that I saw for X was $9.4 billion,
Oof.
which is a drop in users and a drop in advertising revenue. And why I'm going to stay out of that discussion.
Right, right. Yeah, it is a good list to look at in terms of your company. You want to promote yourself on social media. Where should you spend your time? And I know that there is certain industries like creative area painters and so forth that I think that it's recommended they use Pinterest because that's where the best exposure for say an artist is. But for someone else, it may be Facebook for their generation, or for somebody else, it might be Instagram for the younger crowd, I guess.
That and
Um,
TikTok.
right, right. Yep. Okay. All right. I don't see any other questions coming in from anybody, so I guess we can close a little bit early.
Okay,
Uh,
let me move you on to your next slide here.
okay. So, as a reminder, a recording of this webinar and the materials will be available within the next day or so. Our next live webinar is Tuesday, November 5th at noon, and the topic is LinkedIn with Lorraine Duncan presenting. Look for the specifics on our website. Again, SCORE Fairfield County offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. Also, please fill out your evaluations that have been sent at the end of the webinar. We do share that with our presenters. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's live webinar. In closing today, a big thank you to Bud for presenting today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for listening, folks.